Okay, hi and welcome to second part of the character design and anatomy lecture. So I will be picking off where we left off, and at this point of time we'll be addressing some key issues. I will not actually go through a tutorial to explain to you how every single body part is drawn, or talking about proportion, because proportions tend to change when you want to design characters. What I'm talking about, the kind of proportion that I'm talking about is, I think you guys might have seen um, some illustrations in the past, or maybe when you were studying um, in high school about how many heads, and yeah, so I'll bring up an example of what I think you guys would have been given the drill about. So yeah, this one where how many heads are needed to draw for a character, and if you're Asian then it's probably slightly different. There's one here with Han Solo. How many heads is your character supposed to be? Well, if you're drawing very lifelike characters, meaning to say that they are not stylized, then you would conform to this. But the kind of characters that I want you guys to try and experiment are not photographic or very realistic characters. I hope for you to do some kind of stylization. And when I talk about stylization, I'll show you some examples later on, meaning that you do tweak the proportion a bit. Remember I talked about archetypes? So sometimes you need to exaggerate some certain body parts, bigger shoulders, sometimes bigger heads, in order for the character archetype to really come true. Okay, so what I'll be showing you are some key issues that I think a lot of people will face. And just for you, I'm addressing them not to tell you exactly how to do it, but just to give you some key guides about how to actually get better at it, because everyone will develop their own way of doing it. You can go on to Pinterest or YouTube to find out even more, yeah, how to draw these parts. Now the first area is the human hands. Okay, this is an issue which I notice is very common when I'm looking at students' work, is that they all tend to have very similar lines, very even fingers, and the lines or the dots of every joint, the hand joints, your knuckles, yeah, and the joints of your fingers are not forming a straight line. They should be forming curves, yeah, arches like this, so that when it folds, it actually does look like this, okay? So this is one thing that I want to highlight to you. And also there are curves even within the fingers. They do curve like this. They aren't necessarily going out straight like that. Okay, but I think this is the bigger issue here. Okay, so these are some things to note. You see, if you draw your palm open like this, it's supposed to be curved, not straight. Okay, because actually this part is also curved, right? Yeah. Okay, so this is the one issue. Now, you can see that I've chosen some slides here, some pictures of how to actually demonstrate to you how to draw. Now there are some people who like to divide the palm like this, and the fingers like this, in order to experiment or analyze how to draw a hand. Sometimes people tend to want to do things like that, yeah, where they divide the first portion. Usually the top of your palm is where is very important. I notice that students tend to miss this out. Okay, what usually happens, what I can show you is, let's just take out a blank piece of paper from Photoshop. Sorry. I'm going to show you what I usually do catch happening in illustrations, and well, sometimes marks suffer for it. So yeah, your hand, basically you would have your hand coming to a wrist. Your wrist is here, yeah, and you will tend to usually have a platform which is actually the palm, your surface of your palm or the back of your hand, and this area is where students tend to miss out, because basically what this is you've got your thumb coming out from here, and then you've got your fingers coming from here. So these are your knuckles, right? Now this area tends to be forgotten in some ways, where students either have it in a reduced portion or they ignore it completely, and fingers start to stick out straight away. it is not the case. You have to have this portion, and it is quite a significant area. Yeah, so I do notice a few times that this becomes an issue. So do just take note. I'm not saying that everybody makes that mistake, but it's quite common. Yeah, so the back of your hand or your palm is an area you need to address, and these what you call, these few pictures actually show you how it was done, right? um, how you can actually create. In fact, you see this guide here, it shows you how to create the palm first, yeah, with a square shape. Same with this one, you see, they always tend to start off with the palm because that's where all your fingers come out. So don't go drawing fingers first, draw the palm. It's like the foundation of your fingers. So before you can even draw the fingers, draw the palm first. Okay, right? So another way to learn is, if I got this picture from Pinterest, I just simply go to Pinterest and type in I just type in hand poses. So you get tons of either drawings or photographs for you to study from. And I've chosen, yeah, this one here, this one, I've downloaded it. And in order for me to study hands, so all I do is, you can either print it out or you can just refer to it and just kind of observe how to draw hands. Just probably put like a light overlay on top of the photograph, and I create a new layer in Photoshop, and I'm just gonna just draw and just do some studies of palms. So I'm gonna erase that line. So in this case, I'm just gonna highlight this area, square, starting off with a square, and taking note of the curve. You see the fingers? Yeah, so there's a curve here. These are the first joint, second curve as well. So these are the fingers. I delineate them, yeah. And then your thumb is obviously, there's a circle here, you know, this fleshy part. Then your thumb has two parts, it's here and here, all right, unlike your other fingers which has three. Okay, so this is how I do my study. You know, I try and look at photographs and just do a study of hands, starting again with the square, probably from the side, yeah, and then trying to just go around it and experiment with how to actually create these shapes in three-dimensional form. Look, observe, I'm actually drawing shapes, yeah, they are not just I mean forms, not shapes. Yeah, there's a, even the square that I just drew just now, there's a thickness to it, which is this area here, right? This one as well, this one as well. So yeah, look at photographs and try and do studies of them like that, like break them down to manageable sizes. What I'm doing here is trying to break down a complex shape like a hand into manageable sizes, or rather parts. So when I'm drawing a hand next time, I can know how to construct it, you see. Yeah, usually some people, they like to use cylinders or squares to construct the hand. What you're doing when you're doing exercises like this is you are attuning your mind how long each finger should be. You're making the habit of actually creating a curve when you're drawing a hand, instead of a square flat piece of thing like that with fingers that stick out straight. You draw, the more you draw and do this kind of practice, the more you realize, oh, I have to make a curve, because the fingers do not appear out of a straight line, they appear out of a curve, and it's curved here as well. Yeah, so learning to draw out of photographs is a good way to study hands. Yeah, so these are two very simple basic forms, but yeah, there's so much to study about. You can draw a line, draw a line here, here, because that's where the folds are, and then here. Yeah, so you get accustomed to actually drawing fingers this way. Yeah, just do a sketch over it. I mean, I'm just doing it very quickly just to demonstrate to you how I break the form up. And you will notice that as you draw more, you realize that thumb has only just two joints, not three joints, right? So that's how I usually study hands. The more you draw, Hence, the better you get at it, because you become so well trained. You know how long every finger should be, how they look like when you fold your fingers like this way. Okay, so do practice like that. Okay, you can't get better at drawing hands if you only draw one or two hands for the rest of your life, right? You need to keep drawing them. Okay, so hands is one issue that you need to just take note of when you're doing your illustration. Yeah. Now the next one is of course the feet, the leg. All right. If you check here, the leg is built up of like a kind of a pyramidical shape that is slanted to one side, and this is an area where I think a lot of students also have problems because their feet tend not to have this triangular form. They tend to just stick out like an L shape, and that's also an issue. Yeah, so you need to take note of that. You see how it is constructed. All right, it sticks out. There's a triangular form here. Okay, I will show you now again what I kind of see happening. Yeah, so basically to draw feet, there's now a lot of the demo just shows that, okay, you've got the basic form. Yeah, I'm drawing forms. A form is, this is a cube, it's a form, right? A square is a shape. So form has this three-dimensional feel over it. So now this leg I'm drawing here, you see there is this part here. Yeah, so basically when you're drawing a leg, for instance, a foot actually, you have to take note that your ankle is here, your feet are here, it goes in, and then your toes come out, right? Even your toes come up, rise, and they kind of go down like that a little bit. Okay, and they curve as well. There's a curve, but this part here, all right, needs to have a rise and then up. See, right? The heel. Yeah. So this part here is often missing. I notice some students, and this is curve. So what happens is from the side view, your feet needs to look like this. What I see often students drawing is something like this. Yeah, where there is not enough, right? You need to understand that there's a piece of kind of musculature going on here, because if you look at the bone of your feet, it's curved, it's arched, right? So there's flesh here. Do not do this. Okay, so that's one area again I want to highlight to you guys that you need to make sure you take note of. And the other one is take note of the thigh and calf separation. Make sure there's a tapering at the knee. That's another issue. Most often times it seems as if most legs of characters, especially even when you're drawing legs of characters that are very slender, there needs to be that musculature that separates your thigh from the calf. And this kind of a demonstration that I've just shown you here, they like to use the figure 8 to kind of just make sure that happens. You see, so the separation needs to most often I can tell you what I see students drawing is that the legs would just be a straight down like this, and then of course there would be errors in the foot, not having that. In actual fact, you really need to take care. I mean, it's probably not so straight, they might have a little bit of a dent, but in actual fact you need to make sure that your legs have that separation, thigh, and then the calf. Yeah, it tapers down like this, and then it goes out again because the calf muscle is here, and then it tapers down on the top, and you go like that with your foot. Yeah, so you need this separation of the knee. Yeah, it needs to go in and then come out again, and then it tapers more towards the bottom, the Achilles tendon here. Okay, so please take note of this. Do not make legs that are straight down with very little kind of a divide here. Make sure that your characters have a knee. All right, even if it's relatively let's say a character who's quite chubby, you still kind of need to create that delineation of knee and calf. Yeah, probably not so obvious, but have the indent, okay, the swooping in and then the coming out again. All right, so that's pretty important to note. Okay, so you have that. Yeah, so you have to have this separation that happens with the leg. Okay, so that's one area to take note of. Um, okay, sorry. Let me just get this right. Swap. Okay, so leg. Now, eyes. I think when the eyes are up front, these are some tips of how to draw eyes. Eyes, like every other body part, has a stretch and squash as well. You can see how the brows also, eyebrows help to create emotion for the character, right? Look at how it's stretching and squashing and given different characteristics to your eye, or different kind of emotions to your eye. Now, eyes are very important because just looking at the eye, you can tell what emotion they are kind of feeling, whether they are sad, they are bored, angry, all right? So eyeballs are quite nice to draw. I like drawing eyeballs, but and a very common issue I find is when a character's head is at the side, all right, and that is when the eye becomes what I call the Egyptian eye. So students tend to like to do this, and this is an error I find happening very, very often. In fact, on the day you're doing class exercise 4, when you're drawing the human anatomy and you get a side profile of the model we are providing, please do not do this, okay? You have the character's face, for example, you've got the model's face and the nose. Now, the eye is usually here. Now, let's say this is a side profile of the model you have for your character. Please do not draw an eye like this, okay? From the side, you cannot get an eye that has this. You simply cannot see the inside of your eye, okay? Unless you're drawing a character from the front view, right? Then yeah, you can see this part of the eye, right? But from the side, you don't actually see that. What you actually should be getting is simply this, all right? Usually what you'd start off with is kind of like drawing an arrow with two shapes like that. And then all you do is add a curve. And then you color in your pupil. This is the side profile of an eye. This is what I call the Egyptian eye, because this is how hieroglyphs look like, right? You know what hieroglyphs are, right? They are ancient Egyptian paintings. So I'd show you Egyptian hieroglyphs. Okay, so if you look at the characters like this one, yeah. So from the side profile, this is how Egyptians used to draw their eye. But you're not doing hieroglyphs, yeah? You are doing actual character design and concept design. So please do take note that you need to draw an eye like this, not like this, okay? So for example, if you're drawing a side view of a character, how I usually like to start off is very simply the shape of the face that you want. Yeah, just general shape of the face you want. Let me adjust my pen. You'll be learning Photoshop pretty soon, so I'll teach you how to use it properly. Just imagine you're sketching on pencil. Yeah. Okay, so I've got the shape like this. All right. Let's just say I'm going to mark out where the nose is. So I'm going to make this guy have a relatively long nose, sharp nose, okay, yeah. And then probably his mouth is here, okay. So I'm now going to start filling in. Now the eye is usually like this. Now how do I construct the eye? You see this nose here? All right, so the eye should be above the nose, right? So I'm going to draw the eye here, because what happens is usually the eye, this bottom line here, will extend out to the cheek, sorry, extend out as a cheek. So this is the eye, this is the cheek that probably you will not draw, but it will extend out to the cheek, all right? And then it comes back in for example, and that's where the mouth will end here, right? And you might not want to draw this line as well, but it's a guide. It's a guide. I'm just showing you as a guide. And the nose is here. So in order to complete this character, I'm gonna just draw in a thicker line from the side view, like that, right? Probably I would extend his eyebrow because this will then be his eyebrow, right? Yeah, it sinks in, you see, at the eye where the eye is, yeah, and then the nose would come forward, and then it would come this way. The mouth, this is the mouth, the upper lip. Make sure you extend out for the lower lip, and you're complete. So this is how a side profile of a character should look like. Okay, yeah, the eye, this is how to draw an eye. Never like this, like this. It should be two lines, not like that. Okay, it should not be an oval, it should be kind of like a drawing, like a degree, you know. Okay, because from the side you're looking your eye from the side, so your eyeball is like that, and these are your eyelids, right? So that's how to draw a character from the side, okay, especially the eye. All right, so that's one area to take note of. So I'm gonna encourage that you go practice drawing it. Just draw probably a couple of characters from the side and use this new method I teach you. Draw the nose out first, then draw the eye, then use it to create the mouth, you know, because the cheek has a running line. Now the next one is, I have key issues are with animals. Now if you're going to design, for example, the assignment with the kitsune, which is the fox, right, and if you're going to create a fox that is very much like an actual fox, then it's be good to actually look at the anatomy of a dog or a fox, because the limbs are often an issue. Yeah. Now let's look at the dog bone here. Their legs are not like ours. They are actually, most animals are often walking on their toes. Okay, this, for example, this bone here is a thigh bone, right? And this is like your shin bone, which is this lower part of your leg. Now for animals, all right, now for humans, the bone, this is the ankle bone, but for animals it's raised. Okay, I think it might be easier if I were to bring out the picture of a human skeletal structure system. Okay, so let's look at the side, from the side view. Okay, that's a very good picture of a skeletal system. So now let's look at the comparison between the dog and also the human body. Now this is what they call the femur. All right, the femur is the largest bone in your body. It's your thigh bone. Then after that, what happens is you have the lower leg. Yeah, these are your shin. This is the shin bone area, and then after that you have the human beings, our foot, our ankle is flat on the ground, but animals, you can see, no. All right, so this little part here that sticks out is actually their ankles, and they're always on their toes. All right, except for things like squirrels, then they're flat-footed, but look at how long their feet are. All right, animals have tend to have very, very long feet. Okay, it's just that it looks like very little on the ground, but actually the whole feet is off the ground, and they're on their toes all the time. Okay, so take note of that, because you'll be having some issues when you are creating, when you're drawing. And this diagram, I think, which I found for you on the internet, is a great example of showing you what kind of errors that people tend to create when they're drawing the animal characters. And this is wrong, this part here. And I think it is a very common error. Okay, so do take note about how to draw animal legs, yeah, especially the four-legged characters. Okay, this is also a very good example if you're drawing like a half human, half animal character, look at the legs of this. You see, it's constantly on their toes. This is the ankle, this is the feet, and these are the toes. So for a character like that, you see, it's saying yes because you need to bend it here. And if the bend is not obvious, then your character looks like it has a very stiff two-part leg, and that should not be the case. It's supposed to be bent here. Yeah, see how when it looks like when it's squatting, it's because hoofs for a horse is like toes for a human being. All right, in fact, hoofs are generally like the nails, right? So you have to think about that. Yeah, the next key issue for animals are wings. Okay, when you draw wings, notice that actually, okay, always understand that a bird's wing is really what is an extension of an arm. Okay, or rather extended arm. Same with bats as well. Okay, so what I usually get when people want to draw angels or birds or characters with wings, they tend to give me a wing that looks like this. Okay, so it's as if it's one piece, but wings are not like that. If you look at an anatomical structure of a wing, it's it's few parts. You have actually a fold like this. Yeah, so this is actually the finger portion of the wing, and this is the arm. So there is a folding here. It's not straight, it's always folded. So if you actually put feathers on this thing, your wing should actually look like this, never like this anymore. Okay, so do take note that when you're designing a character with wings, it should have a fold. See? Yeah, in fact, if you want to go into very detailed drawings of wings, even different parts of the wings have different types of feathers and they have different names for it. Okay, so do take note that this is an area which I feel is constantly an issue. Yeah, the legs of a four-legged animals and the wings of a bird are always anatomically incorrect, or they looked rather not very convincing, yeah, in terms of illustration, that I have seen when I come across students' work. Okay, so this diagram shows you how actually to design wings on even like a four-legged character like a Pegasus, or you want to put wings on a lion or a human being. This is how it should look like. See, there is a fold. Okay, if you look at this diagram, I know it's a bit weird, but why they put it here is actually you must think of wings as an extension of an arm, because essentially wings are the arms of a bird. Yeah, so you've got the humerus, which is your the bone where your biceps are at, your biceps and triceps, then your lower arm, and these two little bones are actually where the wings are. Yeah, your wings extend from. Okay, so do take note of that. Okay, what I'd like for you guys to learn also from this section called character action poses. Now, what I'm trying to address here is when you are designing your character, try and do some action poses. For example, if you've come up with a design of a character, try and put your character in some poses that you feel they will be doing. One way to start off, a good way to start, is to draw the pose that you feel you will be using in your assignment, and then probably a few more after that. Yeah, probably if you got a samurai character, draw him jumping or fighting, holding a sword, posing before a fight. Draw 3 or 4 so that you know that the character the way it poses is comfortable and is believable. Because sometimes if you design a character standing straight and you put armor on top of the character, it looks nice in one pose, but when the character starts to move or jump, how does it look like? Does it still look nice? It needs to still visually look nice. So you need to think about whether the costume works or not, because you're going to put costumes on top of the character, right? And action poses are usually required in an animated film or animated series. Anything animated, you need to do action poses in order to prove to an art director, or is used as a test to make sure that the character is convincing. It's a movable character. It's a believable character that looks nice in whatever poses it's going to be in. For example, just this girl, you can't just deliver one character like that to me. You need to, if you are satisfied with the character, do a few more action poses. Does she look like if she's posing in different poses, right? Okay, so that's what character poses are, action poses are. Look at this that was done for Hayao Miyazaki's Spirited Away. This is Sen, and they've done her in different costumes because she does change costumes. She has one with her big t-shirt on. There's one where she's in the bathhouse when she's working and she's given a proper uniform or garment to wear. So you see, the action poses help also animators to understand how the character should be moving. Yeah, so when you're working in an animation studio environment, your works as a concept artist will inform the animators how they should move. In what manner do they look like when they are jumping or when they are shocked? Yeah, so that's why action poses sometimes in a real studio environment, you would draw more than 3 or 4. You might draw up to 20, 30 in order to make sure that the proof of concept is there. Okay, yeah, so this is for this is an example. I'm not sure which character this is for. This looks, I'm not sure if it's Zootopia, but this one is from Tangled. I know this is from Tangled. Rapunzel. This, I think everyone knows. This is from Frozen. You've got Elsa, for different facial expressions in order to prove that her face can work. This is how angry would look like. This is how sad would look like. Because if you design a character with just one face, but sometimes when they start emoting, you would think that, oh, the angry face doesn't look very nice. I need to adjust it. I need to show the animators how this character looks like when it's angry. Yeah, because you need to tell them how it looks like when it's angry so that they can rig the character and allow the animators to animate the angry face out. Yeah, okay, how far do the eyebrows move up or move down? How big does her mouth actually open? All these things need to be done when you're doing facial expressions. So I do require some of these when you're designing your character. All right, so when you're designing your character for class exercise 5 and you're happy with one of the design, do a few facial expressions. I'm not expecting you to do like this about 20 pieces. I'm just requiring for you to do probably about 3 or 4 as well. Okay, this is an example of how they use the actor to actually draft out the facial expressions. And if you go to an animation studio, you might realize that animators always have a mirror next to them. It's not because they are vain pots that they like to look at themselves, but because they have to. They need to know how the muscles of their face are moving when a character is talking. So you must, you should in fact look at photographs if you want to kind of pose your character in a sort of facial expression like an angry face or a shouting face. Look for a photograph, or even better, emote it yourself and take a picture, take a selfie of yourself, all right, with that kind of emotion, so that you know where your mouth is, your chin is, what kind of folds will appear on your skin when you're frowning. All these things need to be done. This is what visual research is about. Okay, so I will leave you here now with some samples and inspirations for character design, and this is what I call stylization. Yeah, you look at this character here, you know that this body of hers, this upper body of hers, is anatomically it's inaccurate, or in a sense that it's not really real, because a woman wouldn't have such a long neck and such a big head, right, and such thin shoulders. So this is a stylization, but in order to achieve a sort of slenderness to the character that you want to pair with the archetype. For example, you want to design a character that's very slender and agile, which is what this character is about. Yeah, so you see, you tend to stylize it by pushing the neck slightly longer, her arms to be you kind of narrow down her shoulders so that she has that very tapered, narrow kind of a look. Even her waistline is very thin. Yeah, so this is, to me, anatomically incorrect, but there's a stylization to it, right? So this is what I call stylization, meaning there's a style, yeah, that goes with this character. Let's look at this now. This is done by a studio called Creature Box, which I love because they are just masters in stylization. They like to create characters with all sorts of different shapes and bizarre shapes, and it works, you see. Yeah, look at these bunch of robots here, for instance. Different shapes kind of give a different feel to the design. Yeah, this one, for example, as compared to this one you can see that the head is a bit bigger, so probably it has more of a like an intelligent sort of a feel to it. Probably more than this. I mean, they all look like intelligent beings because you know the green gives the emphasis to the head, but this one, the broadness of it gives a much more intelligent feel than something like this, right? And if you look at this character, which one feels heavier? Obviously, this one feels heavier, but this one is a lot faster, right? Can you imagine this guy when he's running with this horn sweeping behind? Automatically, he looks like he's going a lot faster than this guy. So what kind of character is he? This looks like more of a explorer type, whereas he's more like a warrior type character, right? So you can see the shape, how the shape actually changes the way a character can feel or how the character can function. All right. Now let's look at this one. Now this is a character that I can tell you is not so stylized. All right. It's not to say good or bad, but it comes with different challenges. Something that is a little bit more stylized, probably you can get away with errors, but something like this is more photographically realistic, correct? And when things are photographically more realistic, it means that they conform to a certain set of rules that you yourself must conform to. Yeah, so if something is slightly off, people will catch it. Okay, so if you want to draw something photographic, then everything else needs to look quite photographic, meaning that the proportion must be right. Yeah, the shading, even because you're doing something so photographic, right? Of course, it needs the texture also needs to look photographic. Okay, so the anatomy of the character, if it's more closer to real life, then a lot of things changes. You need to make sure that everything else looks more realistic because it's closer to real life. But if something is a little bit more stylized, like this character here, very small waist, it's just a slight bit slightly bigger head than usual, then you can get away with a lot more things. All right. These are just examples of other characters that you can play around with in terms of design. And these, I think, they did a lot of research in culture, in costumes. So these are just examples of how you can be very creative about headgear, lines, how to draw focus to the central face. Yeah. And for example, like this one, how a character would look like without a face and just having a mask, but still have some sort of emotion to it through the costume. Yeah. You know that these characters, they are no safe characters to be around. They look kind of threatening or menacing in some way, right? Simply because of the shape, the lines, very sharp lines. Yeah, so they kind of give a certain sense of threat. Okay. Look at this one, this character here, obviously very stylized, because look at the arms, the fingers, they are all so tapered. But what is this character trying to make you feel, right? With all these flowing lines, there's a sort of a sense of grace and beauty to it, right? Very elegant. Look at how she's holding up the spear, right? I think this is supposed to be the goddess Athena because she's got an owl, and you know Athena is the Greek goddess that is known to be very popular for warring strategies and things like that. So yeah, her design is very slender, and I think the artist managed to achieve a very graceful sort of look. This one, you know, it's there's something mysterious about it because of this swirling of her hair. Whenever you have swirling shapes, it tends to kind of give a sense of mystery and enigma. You know, something very mystical, magical. So this really adds to the kind of personality that this character is. Yeah, I know that she's of death because you see the skulls here and you've got the long claws, right? So shapes do matter. Yeah, so this is obviously very stylized, a very good contrast here between these two pictures. Very stylized, photographic. Stylized, photographic, because you look at his face, it's very simple, almost mango shaped kind of face. Very broad, square shoulders, square shapes. Yeah. Very awkwardly thin ties with expanding bell-bottom pants. So even the suitcase is, you see, slightly awkward. It's not perfect square, it's kind of heavier on top. So it's stylized. As compared to something like this is very photographic. Yeah, you look at the way his skin is shaded, it looks like a photograph. Literally like as if this guy just traced it off a photograph of a model, right? Yeah, so these are other examples of stylized characters. Look at the shape of the gorilla. You see, you don't need a very complex outline. Just look at the silhouette of this gorilla. Yeah, you can really feel the weight of his upper body, but it's not very complex. It's a very simple shape. Same with this old granny. You see there's a big area here. The silhouette is very simple. You can add details in later, but the silhouette is simple, right? Yeah, now these are another one from Creature Box. Yeah, you can look at all the sharp lines of this character. You know that he's a very dangerous, menacing character. Look at this, different designs of different characters. They all seem to have bow and arrow. They're all archers, but look at how the design gives a different feel to each character. This has a more brute force kind of a character. You know that he can go into hand-on-hand combat. Yeah, this one is strictly an archer, but he looks like he's very lightweight. He looks like he can move a lot faster than this guy, right? You look at this guy, he's kind of like got plants all over the place and stuff like that. He looks a little bit more friendlier, doesn't he? So you can see that the shape does determine the character. Yeah, the costume determines what the character archetype is like. So from my lecture, you know that I'm always talking about character archetypes. You need to think about what your character is, and the design need to actually reflect that a lot. Okay, yeah, so another example of how stylization can happen. So I'm not expecting you guys to draw all the time photographic realistic things. I'm not expecting you guys to do this. Actually, to be honest, both are as difficult, because stylization, simplification, it needs creativity, it needs some sort of design strategy. Photographic illustration is not easy also, because you have to make it so photographic. You have to be so disciplined with actually drawing everything to make sure that it looks realistic. Yeah, so both have its pros and cons. Not to say pros and cons, but its difficulty and challenges. So picking one over the other because it's easier, I don't think so. Both have its challenges, because the stylization one, you have to be creative about how you can distort the form to create such interesting shapes. Yeah, such interesting shapes. This shape, this shape, this long face. It takes more creativity to distort characters like this. Yeah, and it takes a lot more discipline to paint a character like this. So there is no easy way out, but challenges are always good for you to learn. So I think this is basically the end of part 2 of the lecture. I hope that these key issues I've addressed is something you will pay attention to and observe. You find you are weak in these areas and you commit errors every time you're drawing in these areas, then go and Google, go and look up the Pinterest and do your references there. All right, so I have like a Pinterest kind of a library where you see, if you type character concept art, there are tons of quality images in Pinterest all ready for you to choose whatever character you want. Yeah, so you go ahead, make a Pinterest account, and make sure that everyone has it on their phone as well. Okay, if I go to I can go to Pinterest and save like character designs. I save drawing poses. Sometimes I have environment designs as well. So I have a library of people's artworks that I like. that I like because of their style, because of the design, sometimes because of the color. But it's important to really learn to keep these kind of things and look at these kind of things, look at people's artworks as well. Because you might be inspired to do something new. Okay, it's not copying, it's learning to inspire something new, because when you start to look at other people's work, you might get new ideas. All right, don't always just fall back on your memory and not look at things and think that that is being creative. Oftentimes you realize you would have been doing something that someone had already done but even better. So you might be just doing something that is someone has done but not so good. So look at how other people have done things, drawn things, um, and see how you can better it or create different versions out of it. Okay, so looking at people's pictures or looking at photographs to draw is not copying. Please try and get that out of your head. I know that a lot of times that kind of thing is very prevalent when you are studying in sekolah menengah. Oh, you draw looking at reference, you copy. So when you copy, you're not so good. On the contrary, I encourage people to actually look at references. Look at references, because it's a way of studying. You may not read a lot from books, but your books or your subjects of study is pictures, and you need to be very diligent to analyze them. Okay, so with this I conclude part 2 of the lecture for character design and anatomy.